In our last video, we covered the 4 characteristics of the mind of a godly wife. And one of the things that came up from that video was encouraging instead of criticizing was kind of the hardest part for some people. And I can honestly agree with that because it is not a default setting to be encouraging in a human mind, like seeing what's wrong with people seems to be a lot easier than seeing the good in people, unfortunately, but that's just seems to be how it is. And I think that's another reason why Jesus says in Matthew to not worry about the speck in someone else's eye, but to worry about the log that's in our own eye, right? The Bible talks about we need to constantly, or that we should examine ourselves. Another reason why it's important to renew our minds, and that's something that us humans, we're critical, we're emotional, we are impatient, and that's why scripture calls us to a higher standard. So in our last video, we talked about the 4 characteristics of the mind of a godly wife, and that being that she takes her thoughts captive. She chooses wisdom over emotion. She understands and guards her influence, and she encourages instead of criticizes. So today we're going to cover our last 4 thoughts of what's in a mind of a godly wife and see how essential it is to being the wife that God calls us to be. Hi everyone, welcome back to Mind and Bible, where we let God transform us by changing the way we think. And when I think about what it means to think in a godly way, I don't believe rest is one of those things. I feel like rest is such a bad word in today's world, but rest is more than just sleep. And sometimes it means just putting aside a task to spend time with your husband instead of spending time with him, but thinking of a million things that you need to do afterwards or during or whatever it might be. And it also might be going on that vacation, if you're able to do so, or simply just getting out of the house, going for a walk, tending to your garden or something like that. Essentially, it's saying that not everything can be in your control 24/7. And it's agreeing with God that you do have limits. I know when I first gave birth to my son, the concept of rest was so difficult for me to grasp because what do you mean? I'm taking care of an infant and I can't walk. I couldn't walk, I think, for about a month, and I can't clean the house. I can't go to the store. I can't do the things that I used to do very well before I had him. It was just so hard for me to realize that I had to just take a break and rest and relax and realign my priorities and take care of something else that was more important. And it wasn't just for a short period of time. It was continuously for months and months afterwards where I had to realign and reshift my priorities. And that was very difficult for me to learn how to do. At the same time, God did not design us to be in a constant state of striving. And I think a lot of us struggle with the idea of rest because we feel like we don't deserve it. We feel like, God is upset with us if we do rest, or if I don't do everything, then everything is going to fall apart all at once. And I think that's why it tells us in Psalm 127 verse 2, it is vain that you rise up early and go to bed late, eating the bread of anxious toil, for he gives to his beloved sleep. Now this verse is not telling us that it is not good to work. Rather, it's telling us that work being done from an anxious and self-reliant point of view leaves us exhausted. It leaves us unrestful. No matter how much we work, no matter we getting up early, no matter if we stay up late, it's still going to leave us exhausted because we are trying to do it out of our own strength. And psychologically, when you're exhausted, the emotional part of your brain becomes very, very loud. And the reasoning part of your brain gets much, much, much more quiet. And we become more irritable, more emotional, or more likely to not think rationally. So that's why sometimes the issue is not that you're failing as a wife, but that you're just overworked, you're overwhelmed, and you're doing and caring far more than God ever intended for you to do. And when you understand rest, when we understand how biblical it is to rest, we are more likely to be at peace, especially in our mind. And that leads us to number 2, the mind of a godly wife prioritizes peace in her household. Human beings experience something called emotional contagion, which means that emotions spread and then other people unconsciously absorb that emotion. I find that when I'm anxious, stressed, moody, or irritable, that my husband starts to become a little more stressed and anxious as well. Also, if you have small children in the home, they are more likely to pick up that emotion a lot quicker, especially babies. Any child under a year old, they pick up distress a lot quicker. If you are yelling or crying, they mirror that so fast. So point being is that it is important to be intentional about the atmosphere that we contribute to, and we tame any unwanted emotion. And Romans 12:18 tells us that. So if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. So a godly wife understands that she cannot control every emotion in her home, but she can influence the atmosphere she contributes to. So number 3, the mind of a godly wife has a heart of respect. So it says in Ephesians 5:33, however, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. One of the deepest psychological needs in men is competence and significance. So men and women hear criticism differently. Women take it as feedback, but men view that as they're failing. If it's coming from their wife, they often view it as they're failing as a husband. So that doesn't mean that wives are to ignore problems or stay silent about sin, but it means that a godly wife learns how to address problems in a way that preserves dignity and doesn't destroy that. And psychologists have found that contempt is one of the biggest destructive forces in marriage, like mockery or public embarrassment or rolling your eyes or belittling. That over time can ruin trust and it can ruin intimacy. So biblical respect is not based solely on feelings or circumstances. It is an act of faithfulness to God, and God does promise blessing upon this. It says in 1 Peter 3:9, because of this you were called so that you may inherit a blessing. So when we apply this, we are then able to understand our last point. The mind of a godly wife prays faithfully for her husband. So I know I'm guilty of this. Many wives love deeply, and because they love so hard, they think that they can fix or change or control and manage the husband's emotions and struggles. And they were never called to do that. So that's why when you pray, it shifts your mind from control to trust. Prayer acknowledges that you can support him, you can build him up, you can encourage him and love him, but you cannot take the place of God's work in his life. And it says in Philippians 4:6-7, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And I think this verse is so important. Number 1, don't be anxious about everything. You can't control everything, right? Number 2, gratitude changes things. So I think it's important to not only pray for your husband, but thank God for him, because gratitude makes you see people a whole lot differently. And the more we focus on what we're thankful for, the less room that we're going to have for resentment or comparison or criticism, the less room we have for that to grow in our hearts and our minds. So as we come to a close, I want to remind you that the mind of a godly wife is not something that's built overnight. It's the small decisions that she chooses to make every single day. Because long before a wife builds a home with her hands, she first must build it in her mind. Thank you guys so much for watching. If these characteristics challenged you in any way, or if you found that you actually struggle with some of these, please let me know. I would love to hear what you have to say. And I will see you guys all in the next video. But until then, keep letting God transform you by changing the way you think.